It started with a mistake, one so small it seemed laughable at the time. I was scrolling through my phone on a quiet Thursday evening, mindlessly swiping between apps when the screen froze. Annoyed, I restarted it. As soon as it powered back on, my phone buzzed with a notification, a missed call from Diane Vale. The name didn't ring a bell. I figured it was a wrong number, a telemarketer, or one of those scam calls everyone complains about. But what caught my attention was the timestamp. The call came at 3:03 a.m., a time when my phone is always on Do Not Disturb. I frowned. How had it gotten through? Curiosity got the better of me, and I Googled the name. The first few results were ordinary, random social media profiles, an obituary from 1987. But then I saw it, a forum post titled, "If you get a call from Diane Vale, don't answer." The thread was littered with cryptic comments. I saw her name on my screen. Now my brother's gone. Break your phone if you see it. Trust me. Nothing is worth what happens next. It's not just a call. It's her way in. My heart skipped a beat. It felt ridiculous to believe, but there was something about the sheer terror in the words that made my skin crawl. My logical side pushed back, this had to be an elaborate hoax. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Later that night, as I sat in my dimly lit apartment, my phone buzzed again. My stomach dropped when I saw the screen. Incoming call, Diane Vale. I stared at it, frozen. The ringing seemed louder than it should have been, echoing in the room like a scream. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but something made me hesitate. A tiny, insidious whisper in the back of my mind urged me to answer, just to see what would happen. I hit decline instead. The moment the call ended, my phone screen glitched. Static replaced my wallpaper, and garbled whispers crackled from the speaker. I flinched, nearly dropping the phone. Then, the screen went black. I wanted to convince myself it was just a malfunction, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Desperate for answers, I returned to the forum. Among the chaos of warnings and cryptic advice, one comment stood out. If you decline the call, she'll come to you. I slammed my laptop shut, every nerve in my body screaming at me to run. But run where? My apartment felt like a trap, its walls suddenly too close. The air grew heavy, oppressive. And then I heard it, a faint knock at my door. I froze. No one ever visited me this late. The knock came again, louder this time. My phone, still clutched in my trembling hand, buzzed with a notification. The screen lit up, and my blood turned to ice. Message from Diane Vale, let me in. The knocks turned to pounding. The door shook in its frame as though something inhuman was on the other side, desperate to break through. I stumbled back, every instinct telling me not to go near it. Suddenly, the pounding stopped. Silence. I thought it was over, until I noticed the shadow beneath the door. It didn't move, it just lingered, long and unnatural, stretching out like it was seeping into the room. And then I heard her voice. Soft at first, almost sweet. Why won't you answer me? It came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing inside my skull. I clapped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The voice grew louder, angrier. You shouldn't have ignored me. The lights flickered. The room plunged into darkness, and for a split second, I thought I saw her, a figure standing in the corner of the room. Her face was pale and wrong, with hollow, black eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. I did the only thing I could think of. I hurled my phone against the wall. It shattered into pieces, and as it did, the shadow at the door vanished. The air lightened, and the whispers stopped. But the relief was short-lived. The next morning, I found something chilling on my kitchen counter. A single, cracked phone screen lay there, the name Diane Vale burned into it. Beneath it was a message scrawled in black, jagged letters. Breaking your phone doesn't break me. I haven't slept since. I don't own a phone anymore, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes, I still hear her voice, whispering my name in the dead of night. I see her shadow in places it shouldn't be. If you ever see a missed call from Diane Vale, don't just break your phone. Burn it. Destroy it. And pray she doesn't find another way in. After that morning, I thought I had done enough. I thought shattering my phone had severed whatever connection she had to me. But Diane Vale, she's not just in the phone. She's something else, something that doesn't stop until you're hers. It started with small, almost unnoticeable things. My laptop would flicker and display the words "Answer me" for just a moment before returning to normal. The static on my TV at night seemed to murmur my name if I listened too long. Even the whispers of wind through my apartment's drafty windows sounded purposeful, like they were trying to form words. And then, 3 days later, she found a new way to reach me. I was in the shower when I heard it, the sound of a phone ringing. At first, I thought it was my imagination. I didn't even own a phone anymore, and yet the sound grew louder, echoing in the tiled bathroom. The steam clung to the mirrors, and through the foggy haze, I saw it. A handprint. It wasn't mine. It was too small, with long, spindly fingers, pressed against the glass like someone had leaned in close to watch me. My chest tightened as I backed into the corner of the shower. Then, her voice came through the ringing. "I told you, breaking your phone won't break me." I lunged for the shower knob, cutting the water. The ringing stopped, and the bathroom was silent again. But the handprint remained, dripping with condensation. I didn't stay in my apartment that night. I packed a bag and left, driving aimlessly until I ended up in a dingy roadside motel miles from the city. The room smelled of mildew, but it was a small price to pay for the illusion of safety. But even there, she found me. The motel's old tube TV turned on by itself at 3:03 a.m., bathing the room in a pale, flickering light. The static roared like a storm, and then her voice broke through. "Do you really think you can run?" I yanked the plug from the wall, but the TV didn't stop. The screen flickered, and for a brief moment, I saw her again. She was standing in a hallway, my hallway, right outside the door to my apartment. Her head tilted unnaturally as her black eyes stared into the camera, like she knew I was watching. I ran. I didn't stop until dawn, driving as far as my car would take me. I ended up in a tiny town off the highway, where no one seemed to know anything about Diane Vale. I wanted to believe I had outrun her, that whatever tether she had to me had finally snapped. But that night, I realized there's no escaping her. I woke to the sound of knocking. It wasn't on the motel room door this time. It was on the window. I turned my head slowly, every fiber of my being screaming not to look, but I couldn't stop myself. She was there, standing just outside the glass, her face pressed against it. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Then I noticed the phone in her hand. It was my phone, the one I'd shattered days ago, impossibly whole again. She raised it to her ear, and in the silence, my own phone, still in pieces in my bag, buzzed. The screen, cracked and dark, lit up with those same, terrible words. "Incoming call, Diane Vale." I screamed and grabbed the pieces of the phone, hurling them as far away as I could. But it didn't matter. The buzzing grew louder, vibrating through the room like it was coming from the walls themselves. "Answer me," her voice whispered, soft but insistent. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I grabbed my car keys and fled, leaving everything behind. Now, I live in constant motion. I never stay in one place for more than a night. I avoid electronics, but it doesn't help. She doesn't need devices to find me anymore. She's in the cracks of the mirrors, the whispers of the wind, the flickering of the streetlights. And every night, no matter where I am, I hear her. Knocking. Ringing. Whispering. If you ever see a missed call from Diane Vale, don't just break your phone. Destroy it. Smash it, burn it, bury the ashes far from you. And even then, pray it's enough. I used to think fear had limits, that there was a point where your mind would numb to it, where you'd stop feeling the relentless thrum of terror. I was wrong. Diane Vale has no limits. A week after fleeing the motel, I ended up in the middle of nowhere, a nameless town, the kind of place where time feels like it stopped decades ago. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, like rusted iron. I found an old cabin to rent. No cell service, no TV, no internet. It felt safe, for a while. The first night was uneventful, but on the second night, I woke up at exactly 3:03 a.m. to the sound of footsteps overhead. The cabin had no second floor. I froze, clutching the blankets as my ears strained to make sense of the sound. It wasn't just random creaking. The footsteps were deliberate, slow, like someone was pacing above me. I wanted to convince myself it was an animal, but then they stopped, directly above my bed. That's when the whispering started. It wasn't just her voice this time. There were others, dozens of them, all speaking in hushed tones that overlapped, forming a dissonant hum. I couldn't make out the words, but I felt their intent, mocking, malicious. I scrambled out of bed and grabbed the lantern I'd brought, its weak glow barely piercing the darkness. The moment I turned it on, the whispers stopped. For a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined it all. But then I saw the ceiling. The wood was damp and discolored, and as I stared, a single droplet of black liquid fell, landing on my cheek. It burned. I wiped it away frantically, my hand trembling as I looked at the stain it left, a deep, inky black that seemed to shimmer faintly, like it was alive. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I found something outside the cabin. A phone. It wasn't mine, but it looked old, ancient even, with a cracked screen and buttons instead of a touch screen. A sticky note was taped to it, scrawled with 2 words in jagged handwriting. For you. I didn't touch it. I didn't even look at it for more than a second. Instead, I grabbed my bag and got in the car, speeding away without a destination in mind. The thing is, she didn't need me to pick up that phone. The road stretched endlessly in front of me, flanked by dense woods on either side. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that seemed to twist and writhe like living things. My car radio, which I hadn't touched since I started driving, crackled to life. At first, it was static. Then, her voice. You can't run forever. The car suddenly felt smaller, like the air was being sucked out of it. My vision blurred, and my hands shook on the steering wheel. I turned the radio off, but the voice continued, growing louder, echoing from everywhere. Why won't you listen to me? The engine sputtered. I slammed my foot on the gas, but the car lurched and stalled, coasting to a stop on the side of the road. The silence that followed was deafening. I stepped out, the hairs on my arms standing on end as the forest seemed to close in around me. The wind carried a faint sound, a ringtone, distant and distorted, coming from deep within the woods. No, I whispered, backing away. But the sound grew louder, closer. And then I saw her. She emerged from the shadows like she'd been there all along, her impossibly pale skin glowing in the dim light. Her black eyes locked onto mine, and her mouth twisted into a smile that didn't reach her face. In her hands, she held that same ancient phone. Answer me, she said, her voice soft but insistent. I stumbled back, but my legs felt heavy, like the ground was pulling me down. The trees around us swayed violently, though there was no wind, and the sky seemed to darken unnaturally fast. I don't want this. I screamed, tears streaming down my face. Her smile widened, and she stepped closer. But I do. When I woke up, I was back in the cabin, though I had no memory of returning. The phone was on the table, its screen lit up with a single word. Soon. Since that night, I've stopped trying to run. Wherever I go, she follows. She doesn't always appear, but I know she's there. I see her in reflections that don't match my movements, in shadows that stretch too far, in the flicker of a light bulb just before it burns out. And the whispers, they never stop. I've met others who've gotten the call. Most didn't last long. They either vanished or went mad, muttering about her, clawing at their ears as if trying to scrape her voice out of their heads. I don't know how long I have left. But if you're reading this, take my advice. If you see a missed call from Diane Vale, don't answer. Don't decline. Don't even hesitate. Just destroy your phone and run. Because once she finds you, there's no escaping her. And sooner or later, she always gets what she wants. I've tried everything, burning the phone, smashing it to dust, even burying it in the deepest woods I could find. Each time, it comes back, unscathed, waiting for me like an uninvited guest. But it's not just the phone anymore. Diane has a way of making herself a permanent fixture in your life. I no longer see her just in the corners of mirrors or in fleeting shadows. Now, she's in the spaces you never think to look. One night, I tried sleeping with every light on, desperate to keep the darkness at bay. But when I woke, it wasn't the dark that terrified me, it was the light. Every bulb in the house glowed a sickly yellow, casting long, warped shadows on the walls. And in those shadows, I saw her face. Not once, not twice, dozens of her faces, all staring at me, their hollow eyes filled with something unspeakable. They didn't move. They didn't blink. But they were watching, waiting for me to slip. Then there's the dreams. At least, I think they're dreams. In one, I was walking through a vast, empty field. The air was heavy, like the sky was pressing down on me. As I trudged forward, I realized the grass beneath my feet wasn't grass at all, it was hair, long and black, stretching endlessly in every direction. I froze, my stomach twisting as I felt it shift beneath me. Then, the ground opened, and I fell into an abyss of writhing limbs and echoing whispers. And at the center of it all was her arms outstretched like she was welcoming me home. I woke screaming, my throat raw and my body drenched in sweat. But the worst part was the hair. It was real, long strands of black hair tangled around my fingers, my legs, even my mouth, as if it had crawled its way into my bed while I slept. Even when she's not visible, she finds ways to remind me she's here. I was driving again, desperate to put distance between myself and whatever this nightmare had become. My car's gas tank was nearly empty, and I pulled into a decrepit gas station in the middle of nowhere. The attendant, an older man with sunken eyes, barely looked up as I approached the counter to pay. "You look like you've seen her," he muttered without prompting, his voice low and raspy. My stomach dropped. "Who?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pointed to the security camera monitor behind him. At first, I didn't see it. The grainy footage showed the empty parking lot, my car parked at the pump. But as I stared, I noticed movement, barely perceptible at first. A figure was standing just out of the camera's range, half hidden in the shadows. Then, she stepped forward. Her head tilted at an unnatural angle, her black eyes locked onto the camera. She didn't smile this time. Instead, she raised her hand and pressed it flat against the lens. The screen went black, and every light in the station flickered and died. "Leave," the attendant whispered, his voice trembling. "Leave and don't look back." I didn't need to be told twice. But it didn't matter how far I drove or how fast I ran. She's not bound by distance or time. Diane Vale is something else entirely, something that exists everywhere and nowhere. I've seen her reflection in puddles on the street, her silhouette standing in the fog at the edge of a forest, her name scrawled into the frost on my car's windshield. She's in the static of every broken TV, the hum of dead air on a radio, the silence between breaths. And now, I think she's in me. I don't know when it started, but I've begun hearing her voice even when there's no phone, no device, no noise at all. It's not external anymore, it's inside my head. Sometimes, it's soft and coaxing, urging me to stop running, to let her in. Other times, it's a deafening roar, drowning out my own thoughts, leaving me trembling and broken. Worse, I've started seeing things that shouldn't be possible. The other night, I glanced at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and froze. My reflection didn't move. It just stared back at me, its eyes black and hollow. Then it smiled, a wide, unnatural grin that stretched too far, and whispered in her voice, "You're almost ready." Ready for what? I don't know, and I don't want to find out. I've thought about ending it, ending me, but even that feels like it won't work. I've read stories of others who tried, and they say the same thing: Diane doesn't let you go, even in death. There's no escape. If you're reading this, you might think I'm insane, or that this is some elaborate hoax. I wish it were. But if you ever see a missed call from Diane Vale, remember this. She's not a ghost. She's not a person. She's a crack in reality, a whisper between worlds. And once she's noticed you, there's no way to unsee her. I don't know how long I have left. My reflection is still smiling at me, even as I write this. If you ever hear your phone ring at 3:03 a.m. and see her name on the screen, don't answer. Don't decline. Don't even look. Just destroy the phone. And pray she doesn't find you anyway. I thought there was no way out, no end to the torment. Diane Vale had become the air I breathed, the shadows I avoided, and the silence I dreaded. I was unraveling, each day closer to madness. But then, something changed. It started when I found an old journal in a box of belongings at a flea market. The leather cover was cracked, the pages yellowed with age. It wasn't labeled, but as I flipped through it, the words written inside sent chills through me. They described her, the whispers, the calls, the relentless pursuit. The author spoke of a ritual, a way to sever her connection. It wasn't a guarantee, and it came at a price. The instructions were cryptic. Speak her name into the flame. Offer what binds you. Face her in the place she first touched your soul. I didn't fully understand it, but I was desperate. And desperate people do reckless things. I retraced my steps back to the motel where it all began. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness, like the world itself was holding its breath. I set up in the parking lot, lighting a small fire in an old metal trash can I'd found nearby. The journal lay open beside me, its pages fluttering in a breeze I couldn't feel. Her name was on my lips before I could second-guess myself. Diane Vale. The flames roared to life, twisting and turning as if alive. I took the phone, the cursed thing that had haunted me, and threw it into the fire. It screamed. Not a crackle or a hiss, but a piercing, human scream that echoed into the night. The ground beneath me trembled, and the air grew cold. Then she appeared. Her form was more solid this time, more real. She stepped out of the shadows, her black eyes gleaming with something close to amusement. "You think you can end this?" she asked, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The journal had warned me of this moment, of the test. Face her, it had said, and do not waver. Diane moved closer, her figure shifting and flickering like a glitch in reality. Her voice grew softer, almost kind. "You don't have to fight. Let me in, and it will all stop. No more fear. No more pain." Her words were honeyed poison, and for a moment, I almost believed her. But then I remembered the others, those who had succumbed, who had vanished or gone mad. "No," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. Her smile faltered. The air grew heavier, the ground beneath me cracking as if reality itself was protesting my defiance. She lunged, her form dissolving into a swirling mass of shadows and whispers that surrounded me, pressing in from all sides. I closed my eyes and focused on the flame, on the journal's final instruction, offer what binds you. "What binds me is my fear," I whispered. "And I give it to you, Diane." The shadows recoiled, and for the first time, I heard her scream, a sound of rage, anguish, and something else. Desperation. The fire exploded into a brilliant white light, engulfing everything. When it faded, she was gone. I woke up in the parking lot, the fire reduced to ash. The phone was gone, and the air felt lighter, as if her presence had been scrubbed from the world. For the first time in months, I felt free. That was 6 months ago. I haven't seen or heard from Diane Vale since. My nights are quiet, my reflection my own. But sometimes, when the wind is just right, I swear I hear a faint ringtone in the distance. And when I do, I turn off my phone. Just in case.